How do we bring rest to the weary? That's a question that has been on my mind the last couple weeks. Yesterday, in the first reading, we hear Elijah is hiding from the wrath of the current king, and he is sent by God to a widow. Once he meets her, he asks her to serve him water and bread. She responds that she has no bread, and the little bit of flour and oil she has left, she is preparing as a last meal for her and her son before they die. The widow is clearly worn out, feeling despair, and has almost nothing left to give. And doesn't it seem odd that Elijah is sent to a widow to receive help when she would likely be the one in need of help? No wonder she felt so tired. This is the feeling I keep hearing over and over again from our brothers and sisters in the Black community. Faced with yet another act of police brutality, another unjust killing of a Black person, George Floyd this time, they are tired, exhausted. Why does this keep happening? Will things ever change? How many more protests will we have to organize until there is equal justice, equal treatment, equal access? And then I think of Elijah asking the widow for help. How often, as a white male, have I expected my Black brothers and sisters to provide answers to the issues of racism to me? How often have I placed the burden on them to educate me on these issues of injustice? Time and time again, as a society, we expect those who are victims of racism to provide the solution to racism. It's like Elijah going to a starving widow asking for food. Of course, she would feel worn out from that. Of course, our brothers and sisters would feel worn out from having to provide answers to something that they are the victims of. The story doesn't end there, though, for Elijah and the widow. Maybe because of the despair Elijah sees on the widow's face, or simply divine providence, despite Elijah's burdensome request, Elijah seems to realize that he has the power and privilege with God to provide not only for himself, but also for the woman and her son. Elijah advocates to provide a year's worth of flour and oil through God's grace, bringing about new life, and I suspect great rest to the widow and her son. The message I hear in this is that it's time for those of us in society who aren't the victims of racism and inequality to be the ones to do the work of educating ourselves and advocating for actual change, since we, like Elijah in many ways, have the power and privilege to do so. If we can actually do that, well, that surely seems like rest for the weary.